only 5% of the S&P 500 companies are led by female CEOs. So my questions to you are, what are some of the impacts you have experienced by having female leadership during your career? And additionally, is female leadership something that you seek out when exploring job opportunities? And I'll let you guys just jump in.
Well, I'm happy to kick us off. Hello, everybody. So nice to be here today. I think it's such an important question, and it's definitely something that I look for when I'm on the job hunt. I recently joined Northwestern Mutual about 5 months ago now, and that was a big part of my interview process, was making sure that there was female leadership. We have, not only is my boss a woman, but also our CMO is female. So we have some great women leaders in the company. And I think that it's so critical to ask those questions when you're interviewing, and be observant of things that maybe might not necessarily be upfront. But to contrast, I also was interviewing with another company who had 9 different interviews. That's a whole nother topic on why that many were necessary. But of those 9, I only saw 2 people that weren't white men during that process. And I think that's really telling, that either they weren't empowering their women to be part of that interview process, or they didn't see it as valuable to make sure that candidates were seeing that. And so just being observant, as well as asking direct questions during the interview process, is really critical.
That was great. Anyone else have anything to share on that question? Okay. Curiously, Whitney, when, I love to hear that that is something that you evaluate when considering opportunities. I know in the past I've done the same, and I personally didn't speak up as that being something that I noticed. Curiously, was that something that you brought up in your interview with anyone when you did decide to go a different way?
It was for the 2 people in that were people of color or women that I talked to in that other interview process. I made sure to ask them. I said, how is the culture here? How do you feel supported? And I think, again, just everyone wants to put on a good face in an interview, but if the only thing they have to say is, well, there's an employee resource group, I think, again, that's pretty telling. But, I think it also is on all of us to make sure that we are putting that at the forefront once we're in a role as well. If your company says that they have, a commitment to diversity in their board of directors or diversity in their C-level employees, and you're not seeing that, I think it's important to keep tabs on it. And if it's not changing over time, then I think you also start to have to ask yourself the question, am I complicit if I stay here and make this company successful when they are not making that a priority? I'm giving my labor to make this company, successful and make money. So I need to have that voice and make sure that these priorities are being, held up and making their way to management.
Yeah, just perfect. Actually, and Cydney, it makes you think. And hello, everyone. It's so great to be here. When I think about it, I don't seek it out. I don't seek out female leadership. I just seek out kind of open leadership, people who are open and someone I can connect with, and they're humans and they see me kind of an equal front. And I've been fortunate to work in organizations where that was the case. I do think if I were in the situation where I had 9 interviews and most of them were male, which wouldn't surprise me at all, most of the people I work with are male, I wouldn't see that as a hindrance. If anything, it's okay, cool. Exactly as what you said at the end of that was, all right, well, it's my opportunity now to bring this, to make sure that I am having a voice, that I pulled the chair up to the table, that I'm making sure to represent that, not for that reason, but just because, if they're interviewing me and I'm chosen, all right, I'm already the female there. I'm already in the room. And then it's up to me to prove the value that I can bring, and gender or not, let's do that. And then over time, it should equalize if you're in a good organization. And so I think that that's kind of the way I would see it.
No, I think that's great. I've spoken with other people in the past about, having diversity across the board. You don't know what you don't know. And one of the things I noticed in my past is that, when I joined, there was no maternity leave policy. And it makes sense because it was mostly a male campaign or company when the company started, and there was no reason to have one. And so these are things that had to come about as, the company grew, things like that. Yvette, when we were talking previously, you mentioned something about how your leadership, which happens to be female, has put time on your calendar every Wednesday. Do you mind speaking to that? Because that's something that I think is so important and powerful, especially in this pandemic life.
Yeah, of course. So hi, everyone. I'm Yvette Davis. It was very empowering and comforting for me as an employee of Sam's Club to see our leadership step up, in the midst of this pandemic and say, hey, like, I understand we're all literally going through this together. And because of that, actually put a block of time on our calendar weekly where, she said, hey, if you need to step away. It wasn't necessarily like this block of time is dedicated for work, but it was like, giving us that grace and that reason for us to not have to just sit at our desk and work, but realizing and recognizing that there are other things going on that we may need to take care of. So for me, that was, a reason to like really make me proud for the organization that I work for. And it wasn't just talk. I feel like a lot of times we hear our leaders, they talk and they say, we want you to like take this time, but for her to like take it a step further and like beyond the talk and actually put the block of time on everyone's calendar is what I feel like really made it so impactful.
Yeah, I really like that. I think it's one thing if they had said, hey guys, you should take this time, but when that time is put on your calendar and it's there, you're allowed to take it. And I just think that that's so powerful. And I think that breeds trust and loyalty to a company who respects their time.
We have something similar at Northwestern Mutual. Our CMO has blocked everyone's calendars for lunch, noon to 1. And I think she herself is a mother of 2 young children. And I think, especially during the year that we've just all come off of, being able to just like get some sandwiches on the table and not feel like you're missing a meeting is just a weight off everyone's shoulders. So having that universal block can be really helpful.
Yeah. No, I love hearing that. And I hope that more companies continue to lead in that direction. I know that I am on back-to-back meetings every day, and it's exhausting, So I like that your companies are leading with really recommending breaks. All right, I'm gonna move to the next question. I didn't tell you all this, but I'm adding a little quote I like in here. All right, author Nora Roberts was quoted saying that the key to juggling both work and family life is knowing that some of the balls that you have in the air are made of plastic and some are made of glass. And if you drop a plastic ball, it bounces, no harm done. If you drop a glass ball, it shatters. So you have to know which balls are glass and which balls are plastic and prioritize catching the glass ones. So this past year and a half for many, balancing both personal and work life has been tough. Senior level women are noted to be leaving the workforce or downshifting their careers at 1.5 times more. And this is, during stressful times of COVID-19, with most citing burnout as the primary reason. So what are some of the ways that you have been able to establish clear boundaries between work and personal time during the pandemic? You guys talked about what the company has done to help set boundaries, but what have you done? I know that for me, it's evolved dramatically over this past year and a half as I learned to set boundaries, but what are some of the things you guys have done in order to evolve to this new lifestyle?
I'm happy to jump on in that one. So hi, everyone. My name's Megan. So for me, when the pandemic kicked off, I think it's kind of twofold. So it's open and honest conversations. And there's kind of 2 parts to that. So the first one was when the pandemic hit, I had to have open and honest conversations with my husband or who your partner is or who you share your household with. But we had to have honest conversations where I was working 14-hour days. There was no laundry getting done. There was no household chores. And you know what? He was in sales and he wasn't traveling. And it was you have to take that part on. You have to take on a bigger role here because I have to shift to work. And we had to have those open and honest conversations within our own household to juggle, like you were saying, the glass balls and the plastic balls and understanding who could take on the workload. But then there's also open and honest conversations with myself and my team and saying, where are you at? Where is your headspace? You need to go take an afternoon because you are about to break. Or, you know what? I cannot work past 6 p.m. today because I just can't take this anymore. And I think it's just those open and honest conversations and having that psychologically safe space with your leadership, with your team, with those around you to be able to have those honest conversations about what you need to be successful, not only in your job, but also in your life as a whole.
I can jump on. I completely agree with the boundaries that you have to set yourself. And I feel like, all of us on this panel, we've gotten to a point maybe in our career where we've earn the trust of our peers, or you put in the hours, so you're more comfortable to set those boundaries. I know early on I didn't have any, but I also had less responsibility, so I didn't need to have as many boundaries. Now I have 2 small children. I have a lot of other stuff where I need boundaries. And so I will say very much for me, when it all started a year and a half ago and we started working from home, and I never thought I would enjoy that. And now I very much see it became a necessity because of school closures and quarantine and everything else. But there is so much value with that because I work with them. So Global Hotel Alliance, who I work for, is based in Dubai. So they're 9 hours ahead of us most of the year, and so 10 hours less than time. So if anything, I'm putting myself on an early shift. So I start my day at like 6 a.m. and then I wrap up by 5 or 6. And so yes, it's a long day, but I'm done in time to actually be there for my kids, to be there for dinners and soccer practice and whatnot. And very much I've established with them of don't send anything before 6 a.m. I'm not going to be on it. Also, I'm not going to do night calls. I would much rather a 6 a.m. call than a 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. call because I'm putting kids to bed. So it very much is, here's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to get everything done here. And if I don't, then I will do it on my own time at night. But I don't want calls. I don't want presentations. I don't want to be on and outside of that range. And it's very much been respected. And similarly, there's people on my team who want the opposite. They want to come in at 10 and they'll work till 8 or 9. And that's fine because we do have a good crossover, especially if they're not in this time zone. It works out really well. But it's very much a person by person basis. And, again, this is about women leadership, but I think, yes, it's a personal thing. I feel women a lot of times, maybe with the situation, if you have children or if it's family first there, a lot of times women are wearing the weight of the world. They want to do everything in the household. So you mentioned you're responsible for laundry. Why is that assumed? Or yes, I am too. My husband also does a lot less than me. So I think we just do what isn't done. And so we're doing it all. And therefore it is a lot, I think it's self-imposed. And probably as a group, it's just naturally more self-imposed. And so if we're trying to do it all, it has to be on our terms. So it all becomes your organization has to provide a flexibility. Ideally, we have someone who is in a leadership level who understands flexibility is key, for all individuals. It doesn't have to be because you have children. You might be taking care of parents or a pet or who knows what you're doing, but allowing people to have the comfort to know, hey, I can do this and feel like people aren't scrutinizing me for doing it in weird hours or hours that are different than theirs.
My tip is not as deep as either Megan or Kristi's, but I have a Peloton, and at the end of my work day, I have to get on the Peloton. And that is the line that I draw between that was work time, this is personal time, and never shall they cross, hopefully. So big fan.
Yeah, pretty much something similar for me, like Whitney mentioned. I have made an office in my home, and I've learned to implement like little things. Like before, I probably would just log off the computer versus shut down all the way. Now I like actually shut down when my work day is over. I shut the door to the office so that I know not to go back in there until the next morning. And similar things with my phone. So I have like a personal and work phone, but with my work phone, like I put it on silent once it's time for me to like truly disconnect. And I have started not looking at emails until I'm actually ready to work. Because sometimes you can look at emails and you're still not ready to log on for the next morning. But for me, I've just started implementing a practice of like, don't turn work on until you're ready to turn it on. And then when you turn it off, turn it off.
I really respect that. Whitney told me at one point that she doesn't even have her work email on her phone. And I love that. I strive for that.
That's why I had to separate phones. I couldn't have one phone. I've learned from that in the previous job.
I have not had my work email on my personal phone at over 4 separate companies now. So I don't think there's any reason for it. And you're usually just stressing yourself out. Now, Slack maybe is an exception. I may have Slack on my phone, but
that's fair. That's fair. It's kind of like texting.
Yeah.
You know, I saw there's a TikTok that's been going around. It's saying, if your friend has everything together, she's killing it at work. Her body looks great. She's like killing it in every other avenue. She is a second away from a mental breakdown. You know, it's true. Like, you know, you think about the 40-hour work week and being able to have it all. And the reality is, you know, as more women have entered the workforce, there's typically not someone at home who's cleaning the house and cooking the meals and all these things that typically, you know, someone was home doing. And it's so important to learn to delegate to other people, to outsource when necessary. And it seems like that's something that you guys have all really been working on and mastering. And I think it's something that I need to work on more, but it's, you know, we can have it all as long as you understand what parts you're not going to do yourself. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. What are ways that companies can better support women in a post-pandemic workplace? I know we kind of touched on some of this. So if you guys wanted to, you know, add on a little bit, great. If not, we can move on.
Actually, Cydney, you're reminding me when you mentioned that last point. The best tip, absolutely, when you mentioned delegating or having help, it took me up until last year to realize I need to have help in the morning. I was trying to get kids ready, get them to school. I was on conference calls on the drop-off line at school. I was traveling about 30% of the time internationally, and I still was trying to do it all without help, and it was absolutely insane, and I was insane for going without for so long. All I did was I hired a regular morning nanny, I call it. And I found someone who would come every single day. And if I don't need them, I would just tell them, here, it doesn't matter. I'm paying you anyway. You just come so I know that you're there and I know it's happening. And it's the best thing ever. And I'm so grateful to have figured that out. And I mean, it's only 2 hours a day I need them, but it is the best thing ever. And also like hiring a housekeeper. Yeah, once every 2 weeks. Best thing ever. That means when I have some time to myself, I'm not cleaning. Yeah, I mean, I still clean a bit, but it's the simplest stuff. And yes, it requires a little bit of money, but it's so worth it because, you know, your time should be spent on things that are important when you're not working because you're probably working a lot. And so I completely just wanted to hone in on that one thing. I wish someone would have told me 10 years ago, hey, just hire someone. And I was like, no, I can do it. I can do it. And I did it. And I was miserable doing it. So I'm so glad that now I have it more balanced, delegated. It really helps.
You know, Amber Venz, who I'll say this one thing and then I'm sorry, Yvette. Amber Venz, who runs Reward Style, who started that, she said at one point, you know, if someone else can do the job, something like 70 or 80% as well as you can, let them do it and focus your time on the thing that someone else cannot do. And I think that that's just so powerful in realizing where it's best to spend your time. Sorry, Yvette, I didn't mean to cut you off. Your turn.
Oh, no, you're fine. I think one of the things I was going to say is, you know, it's okay to, I think, Kristi, you were saying this, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to admit like not being okay or going through Zoom fatigue. So like really encouraging people to like step away and take those days off. Like I call them mental health days. I feel like a lot of people may reference them as that, but it's okay to like need to take a day to, you know, gather yourself or just to like relax and do nothing. And I think that's something that, you know, I look forward to people normalizing.
Totally agree. That's so true. Okay. I am going to move on to the next question. All right. So personally, I credit much of my career to strong female leaders who have helped me fight forward at every career step. What are some of the examples you have of female leadership helping you with your career growth?
I don't know. I can start. I don't know if it's necessarily with my career growth, but I would say that this was a depiction of what I would like to say true leadership. And I aspire to also show my direct reports that I'm this type of leader. So early on in the pandemic, you know, our CEO was talking to our organization and she really talked about, you know, how she balances work and her family life. And one of the things that she mentioned is that she, you know, has made this commitment to her children that if they ever need her, she was willing to step down from her CEO position. And so for someone to be at that level of leadership who is, you know, prioritizing their family, their personal life, it's something that, you know, is a reminder to me to also prioritize my personal self and to take, you know, if I ever have to take those type of measures, like not to be afraid to take those steps.
That's such a good point. It's so true. I mean, leading by example is so important. And I mean, yeah, I mean, thinking about someone and that level, you know, prioritizing their family first when you know that they're doing such great things, you know, it's really powerful.
When I think about, and actually that when you mentioned that when we were talking previously, it did remind me actually a few years ago when my son was, he has special needs and we were exploring what exactly he had needed. And I very much needed my afternoons to be like going to appointments and all of that. And I remember telling I was really very much thinking I need to probably quit because I can't do this at the same time and I can't be producing at a level that we're all comfortable with in my mind. And very much it was me working with the organization, realizing I could still work. And then I just worked part-time, we called it part-time, and it got me through and we figured it out and it ended up being fine, but I needed that. And I very much was in that mind frame of, you know what, I never thought I would step away from my career. And at that point in my life, I thought, you know what, the glass ball, I was aware it was going to break. And so it was my, like, I was in an organization that worked with me on that. There was probably many that wouldn't. They would have said, go ahead and quit. I want someone here full time and this role is full time. And so I think that it's really important that, yeah, again, it goes down to leadership. You have leadership who can be empathetic and work with you. But when you ask specifically, Cydney, about like female leadership, again, I did think about it and think specifically in terms of genders, is there any patterns I remember from the bosses I've had? And the one thing that probably stands out with the two female bosses I've had is, you know what, they were the ones who really pushed the status quo. Because I would think, or if I think about it, the male leaders I've followed, and I love them, and I very much respect them in many ways, the ones that I still work with and previously, but they very much, let's say salary was not maybe commensurate with someone's experience or with whatever, or this is the way it's always been done. They just were okay with that. Whereas if I think about the female leaders I've worked with and what I personally find myself doing all the time is always pushing it. No, they deserve more. They should, let's give them more, or this is more competitive, or no, they're providing more value than that. That's what we need to do. And my female leaders were very much a reason why I had salary increases that no one ever had, kind of pitched for me prior. And then they came in, they're like, wow, you're really underpaid. But that's not right. Let's fix that. And thank you. That's a great idea. And the male leaders prior to them hadn't thought it was fixable. And so it is something interesting that maybe, I don't know if it was because maybe that kind of mentality got them where they are, or maybe it's just a thing of, okay, well, we need to be challenging those boundaries. And that's something that I see them doing. And I very much have that challenger mentality anyway, but I think that that's what we need to do for each other because it's currently not happening.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like these are things that we talk about or don't talk about, but more in quiet. And that's why I like panels like this. We need to speak out loud about how we got to where we were and how we helped each other. I realized, I was really thinking about this question this week, and I was thinking about every step of my career, and I'm with you. I respect so many of my my leadership at every company, regardless of gender, of course. But I realize every time I've made a career change, I've really leaned into my female mentors, and they've really helped me go beyond those boundaries that maybe I didn't know that I needed to, or I didn't feel confident doing. And it's great that we're talking about it and knowing, okay, you can ask about these things and you should talk to someone to see what their advice is, so that you don't end up in a role where you realize that you are significantly underpaid for doing the same job as maybe someone else who's being paid much more. That's great. Anyone else have any feedback on that?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, Cydney, the transparency of that is so important, especially for people who, because their parents were, more middle class or working class or whatever, they don't have that generational knowledge handed down to them of this is how you go to negotiate for more, or this is how you can, talk through a raise or things like that. So I've often heard the distinction between a mentor and a sponsor, and I've been lucky enough to have both in my career. But, especially I think when you get to the level when you're moving into executive leadership, so going from like that senior manager level to up to the director level, senior director level, that is a really important time to seek out that kind of voice of wisdom who has been there before and gone through it. Because if you don't have that experience yourself, you don't have that experience in your family, there's a good chance that you very well may be undervaluing yourself and your skills. And so I think that especially is an inflection point that women should be aware of.
That's awesome. We have about 5 or 6 more minutes before we start jumping into Q&A. So I'm going to get to this next question, which is kind of part B of it. What are ways that you have helped empower women in your life? So, previous question was, how have you been empowered, but how are you helping, women or just younger people in general? How are you helping, I guess, the next generation?
I'll jump in on that one. So one of my biggest things, and we kind of talked about this, Cydney, of just, I always encourage my teams, take up that space, get that seat at that table. And you are smarter than you think you are. You are better than you think you are. And we as women have a tendency to think, oh, I shouldn't say anything. Like, I don't know that that's a very good idea. And I used to always tell my teams is, you're the smartest person in that room. You know that better than anybody else here. So you better share all of your ideas. You better come to the table with everything you've got, because really you have more to offer and you have more space to take up than you're allowing yourself. I like to tell this story, and I shared it with you, Cydney. I went and did a talk at my old university with a bunch of women, and one of them asked me a question of, what do I do? I got an internship. She got it at Amazon, and she was like, but all of the other interns are better than me, and I just don't know if I'm going to do good. And I was like, why do you think they're better than you? And she's like, well, they went to Ivy Leagues. They have 3 other internships before me. This is my first one. And I was like, again, why do you think that you're not as good as they are? And I explained to her, I was like, the interviewers thought that you were just as good. They are just as excited to welcome you as they are all those others. So you obviously have something that you can't see, but they can. So you need to go, you need to own it, and you're going to do great. And it's so funny because just a couple of weeks ago, I saw that she got offered a full-time position with them. So obviously she rocked it, she killed it, but she couldn't see how great she really was, even though everyone else could. So that's my biggest thing, is just take up the space, know that you're better and smarter at everything that you do than you're giving yourself credit for it, but take that credit, so that's my biggest piece, is just encouraging women to take up that space.
I love that. And it's so true. I just remember being so timid in my first few jobs and really having to find my way. And you start learning that everyone's faking it and you just need to lead with, your experience and your gut, and people will respect you for that. And that's such great advice.
I was going back to the patterns thing, and it was the reverse. Instead of thinking people with leadership who I look up to now, then I think about my team, right? If I think about genders, and Megan, playing off what you're saying in a more general way, I think the women, I'm always coaching them to have more confidence. And for the males, they're already confident enough, which is interesting because they're the ones, if we have a meeting, they're the ones speaking, and the girls are, you mentioned Cydney, timid. Yes, they're the ones being more quiet. And if it's one-on-one, no, they're there. But if it's in a setting where there's males available, or where there's a larger group, maybe, the women are the ones who are either lacking confidence or lacking the willingness to express themselves. And it's something where, in my coaching, I'm having to build up their confidence, and I'm focusing less on their work and more about, hey, you are strong. Exactly the same idea as what you're saying, Megan. And then for the males, I never have to do that. They already have that, which is very interesting that there's this, like, again, that common factor. And I don't know, explain it, like why it is, but it does probably exist.
I heard once that when applying for jobs, if you list out all of the qualifications, women will only apply if they reach 100% of the qualifications that are outlined. But men will typically apply, and I don't remember the percentage, but something like as long as they qualify for 40% of them. And they won't just apply with hoping I get it. They apply with confidence and, expectation that I deserve that. And I want that. I want to, especially as I've hired over the years, I realize so many of the job descriptions are so vague, and they're not necessarily, we're putting outlines on there, but we're totally okay if people don't hit all of those. But I had no idea about that as I was coming up in my career. And so advice to everyone, no matter who's listening, apply for that job, even if it feels like such a stretch, because it's a good chance if you're passionate about it, you could be the best person who is applying for that job.
I was underqualified or non-qualified for most of the roles I've had. And you know what? I've rocked all of them. So yes, I completely agree. The job role, that's a suggestion.
Going back to the original question too, Cydney, of like how we empower others. I think some of the things we started off talking about of how we set boundaries, you also have to practice what you preach. I've been nagging a person on my team this week because she's sick and she keeps showing up in meetings. And I'm like, what are you doing? Take a sick day. But at the same time, I haven't taken a sick day yet this year. So there's probably, a mismatch there, but really logging off when you're on vacation, not sending that email at 11 p.m. because you happen to log into your email, schedule it to send at 8 the next morning. So I think just being good stewards and then watching for that burnout in the next generation, because they don't have the experience yet to set their own boundaries quite as well. And so letting someone know, hey, I noticed you haven't taken any vacation days this year. Why don't you go ahead and plan a trip? Or something like that, just kind of helping look out for them. And that's especially, I work in social media. It's such a 24/7 thing that we do see a lot of burnout, especially in our community manager level folks. And so I think really keeping an eye on that and making sure that we're giving them the tools that they can start to set boundaries for themselves too.
That's great. Any other feedback before we start jumping into Q&A?
Yeah, I'll add to that last question. Basically echoing what everyone said, but as far as my direct reports reflecting back, they've all, I feel like, have been female. So one of the things that I've seen my leadership do for me, and I try now to do for the people that report into me, is give them opportunities to sit at the table and, present those in front of leadership when they probably think they shouldn't be there. Because I think when you just extend that opportunity to them, it gives them the encouragement and the empowerment that they need to just realize, like, yes, I do belong. Someone else believes in me. And I think, Megan, you mentioned earlier, like, they second guess themselves. They know the information. They're able to, have those conversations. And then outside of that, I do a lot of kind of conversations like this where I go to schools in low income areas and I sit, do their career days. And for me, it's a lot about, one, showing diversity, and then two, showing them that, someone that looks like me has the title I have and does the type of work that I do, to once again encourage them at a young age that, you can do something more than being a celebrity or, an athlete and still find it very fulfilling. So I think those are the things that are not things. Those are the things that I'm doing to make sure that, just encouraging younger people.
Awesome. I love that you speak at schools and stuff. That's awesome.
It's been very interesting during the pandemic because none of them want to turn their Zooms on. So I'm like, am I just talking to myself?
We did a mentorship program with schools, and I don't know how teachers do it. Me as a professional being on Zoom all day is hard enough, and I can't imagine being a student. Sitting still in school was so hard for me. But I laughed because almost all the students put the video to here. So all you could see is like the top of their head. So you knew that they were there, but you couldn't see anything. And I just thought that was so interesting. It was just, the things that the younger people than us are doing. But it was great to have a perspective into this, this lifestyle, this school lifestyle, into the students right now. I'm going to jump into one of the questions. So it says, pivoting is often used as a reference to business, but I believe it is also important and should be applied to careers. How do you know when it's the right time to pivot? What are the fundamentals or key factors to consider before you have ultimate turn/change?
Well, go ahead, Megan.
No, Whitney, go ahead, take it.
Oh, everyone's ready for that one.
Yeah. So I used to be a lawyer and I'm not anymore. So I've definitely pivoted in my life. And I think the simple answer is there's never a perfect moment. There's never going to be the moment when everything in your life is exactly lined up to make a change. So sometimes you just have to go for it. But I think there are ways to be better prepared. Of course, talking to a financial advisor at Northwestern Mutual would be a great start. But, I think that, as long as you feel like you are up for the challenge and you are hungry to take on something new, even if you don't necessarily know everything that you're walking into, you're okay with not being the expert in the room for a while. I think having that mindset of a beginner again can be really healthy and can really propel us to learn new things, try new things, get some amazing new experiences. So don't wait for all your ducks to be in a row.
That's good. Go ahead, Megan.
No, I think Whitney hit it on the head. I mean, honestly, so I've been at Neiman Marcus for 3 months now, but I came from a completely different industry. I came from the travel industry, and mine was, I just didn't have anywhere to go. There was no more growth left. And I love a good challenge, and I always want to take on something new, but I can think of every time I've left an organization, the reason has been different every single time. And I think, like Whitney said, you'll know when you hit that point, and you have to be open to the opportunities that could be out there. I never thought that I'd be going into luxury retail, but here I am, and I love it. So it's a great organization, and it's a new challenge, which is exactly what I was looking for. So I think you'll hit that point and you'll realize when that change is necessary for you.
I told Kristi she should have advice for you because she was previously at Neiman Marcus for 6.5 years. So we have some overlap here.
There we go.
Quite funny because actually I had no idea I'd end up in luxury fashion to start it off. And then I was working there, then went to hospitality, and I wasn't seeking hospitality, but I'm so glad I'm there. And it's been there 12 years now. And the exact same thing Vicki was just saying. And my advice is just whenever you realize that wherever you are has no more stimulation, you're not excited by it, you're not passionate about it. And if there's no opportunities for growth, then that's when you should start looking for something else. And something else might not be better, but it's when you probably are not excited about what you're doing that you need to change. And if you can't find change where you are, then okay, you need to look elsewhere. So I think that's what should be. If your gut is saying, you know what, I'm not interested in what I'm doing anymore, that's okay. That's a good reason to start thinking of your options.
When I interned at the Richards Group many moons ago, Stan Richards said, you give a job a year. If, within a year, if you leave it within a year, you haven't really given it a chance, and you don't know if you're really learning something from it. And at a year, if you feel like that is not your place, move on. And what I have learned is it's okay to move. I mean, find that job that you want, and you don't need to apologize for it. Have a story behind it. Before I found my current job, I jumped all the time, and I had great experiences at all my previous jobs, but I learned from those jobs, this is not where I want to spend the rest of my career. And I pivoted into things that I liked from those jobs until I ended up in programmatic, and I love it. But, find something that you're passionate about. For me, I need to learn something every day. And if I'm not, then I get bored. So find what drives you and, gets you excited to get out of bed in the morning. And if you start dreading work every Sunday, then maybe you're getting burnt out, and maybe find a change. And that can be within your same organization, or that can be moving on. But, I really liked, Whitney, how you said that you were a lawyer beforehand, and now you're in marketing. And, I think there's the risk there. You put all this time into school where you graduated with honors, and, and then you fully pivoted. But, I saw a story where a guy said, they said, no, you just went through all of law school and you need to stay in it. Otherwise, you've wasted all of these years in law school. And he goes, well, now I've been a lawyer for 50 something years, and I've hated every year of it, every day of it. So did I waste 10 years of study or 50 years of practicing? So, just really, really trust your gut and what you're finding passion in. Oh, I feel like we're getting the hook.
No, thank you guys for such an inspiring conversation. This has been awesome. I want to say, going back to what Kristi mentioned earlier about asking for help, I mean, that can mean hiring help, but in my case, my dad's retired, and let me tell you, he loves projects. And so I'm like, Dad, I need you over here Friday at 10, the people are coming to paint whatever. So, I mean, but it's hard to ask for help because you just think I can do it, I'll figure it out. But even just asking family has been really helpful. So thank you guys so much. This was amazing.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, guys, we've made it to the final session of the day. We're here. You've all hung in, and you're going to love this last fireside chat because it's about wine. So that's very exciting. It's almost happy hour time, so totally appropriate. But please help me welcome from Scout and Cellar, Sean Nichols. Sean serves as the Chief Growth Officer for Scout and Cellar. And our moderator for this session is Megan Janitas from Tastemade. So hello to Sean and Megan. Welcome to the stage.
Hi.
Oh, Sean, I think you're on mute. Sean, I think that you might be on mute. You might need to unmute yourself.